Happy birthday, Church 180. I am so excited to cross this milestone with you guys that we have pulled off together. It's our birthday, we're one. And so our plan was to celebrate this afternoon, and it still is. I'm filming this on Friday right now, and we're gonna be making a call because of the inclement weather that's scheduled. We're gonna be making a call around the time of service. So be tuned for whether we actually are planning to have this service in the park this afternoon or whether we are not. And so at this stage, we still are planning on it. So you're probably gonna wanna bring a chair to not have to sit on the ground and dress warm, and it's still gonna be fun. But if we call it off, I wanted to give you our contingency plan. Our contingency plan is that we will still be on site at 3 p.m. for a drive-thru. You can come through with your family, pick up some cupcakes, pick up some coffee, and say hello and be on your way. And then later on that night at about 7 p.m., we're planning to be in our Church 180 Zoom Room. We'll get you the link, and planning to have just a short time where we gather together in our Zoom room, tell a few stories, and celebrate this milestone that is our first birthday. So happy birthday, church. Hope to see you one way or another today.
Hello, Church 180. Right now, I just want to encourage you to like the service on Facebook, YouTube, to let us know that you're there. It doesn't matter if it's in real time or later. Also, if you haven't followed our Facebook page or subscribed to our YouTube channel, I want to invite you to do so right now. Our Church 180 Whatup page has all the links and everything you need to connect with Church 180. You can access that page via our church180sd.com/whatup, or just open the camera on your phone and hold it over the QR code that's on the bottom left portion of your screen. I want to take the opportunity to invite you to our Turn Toward One 8-week online course. It will be kicking off Tuesday night starting February 9th, and we will be discussing how to live a life that surprises the world around you while inspiring people to turn toward hope in Jesus. All the info is on our Whatup page, and as well as the link to purchase this book called Surprise the World by Michael Frost. We have made it to our first birthday. Because of the generosity of many of you tuning in this morning and everything we're able to do to turn people towards hope in Jesus. You can give online or set up a recurring financial gift at church180sd.com/give. It's on our Whatup page, or mail a check to our P.O. box that is on our website.
A thousand times I failed, still your mercy remains. Should I stumble again, I'm caught in your grace everlasting. Your light will shine when all else fades, never ending. Your glory goes beyond all fame. Yeah, in my heart, in my soul, Lord, I give you control. Consume me from the inside out. Let justice and grace become my embrace, to love you from the inside out. Will above all else, my purpose remains. The art of losing myself in bringing you praise everlasting. Your light will shine when all else fades, never ending. Your glory goes beyond all fame. Yeah, my heart and my soul, I give you control. Consume me from the inside out, Lord. Let justice and grace become my embrace, to love you from the inside out. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all fame. And the cry of my heart is to bring you praise from the inside out. Lord, my soul cries out, Lord. In my heart and my soul. My heart and my soul, Lord, I give you control. Consume me from the inside out, Lord. Let justice and grace become my embrace, to love you from the inside out. In my heart and my soul, I give you control. Consume me from the inside out, Lord. Let justice and grace become my embrace, to love you from the inside out. Everlasting, your light will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all things. And the cry of my heart will bring you praise from the inside out. Lord, my soul cries out, and everlasting, your glory will shine when all else fades. Never ending, your glory goes beyond all fame. And the cry of my heart is to bring you praise from the inside out. Lord, my soul cries out from the inside out. Lord, my soul cries out, Lord.
So Christianity was born in a hostile environment in the Roman Empire. That's where it all began. And in the early days of the faith, we've talked about this a lot at Church 180, but Christians were treated brutally. And they were persecuted in extreme measures that are unthinkable to many of us. And it was actually, the last persecution was actually one of the worst under the Emperor Diocletian. And it was around the year 285 when he took power of Rome, and he treated Christians terribly. This is where he actually even made it to church members, not just leaders in society, not just people who'd profess Christians who had influence, but just common, ordinary, just believers, where he would basically make them denounce their faith, like rescind Jesus, like speak against him. Apostasy is the word. Speak out against Jesus or face brutal execution. And this continued on for about 20 years until the year 305 when he retired. And at about that time, there was a young a young guy who was the son of a Roman general at the time. And he got together an army and he faced off against his rival and ended up taking the throne of Rome. And we know him as Constantine in the year 313 AD, where he took over Rome basically at the battle at the Milvian Bridge. And then he issued an edict in 313 which changed Christianity overnight. Like, we're talking the worst 20 years leading up to one man marching, taking power, and issuing an edict and changing the landscape of the Christian faith overnight. And see, there's disputes about his motives. A lot of people think that it was a political move on his part to make Christianity kind of the national, like going from deeply persecuted to the national religion. A lot of people disputed that it was a political move, that Christians were gaining steam and everything along the way. But then other people argue and they say that no, Constantine had a faith in Jesus of his own, and that's what changed everything. Whatever side you take on that, the point is that the faith changed overnight. We know that over the next several years that it became in to be a Christian in the Roman Empire, that even by the year 360, in one generation, in less than a lifetime, people would watch people get thrown to wild animals, all the way to over half of the Roman Empire claimed and professed to follow this Jesus. But it came with consequences. It came with dire consequences in the fact that the discipleship of the faith, the devotion to Jesus, the ways of following him took a slippery slope down into mixing all kinds of things into the faith and a very, very, very casual form of discipleship. And so Gerald Sitzer, in his book, Water from a Deep Well, he says it this way: ironically, the enemy that they had to face was not an evil empire, but a worldly church, not persecution, but privilege now. The church became privileged, and the enemy was a church that didn't look different, but just tried to be a little bit better. And it was at this time that droves of Christians bent on following the way of Jesus and remaining true to the faith, they took to the desert, okay, and escaped out to the desert to face the problems now of their day, which was a pollution, a toxicity to their faith. And they spent time with Jesus, they purged sin, cultivated holiness, and was bent on the mission of saving the church from its own success in the day. And the question is, I mean, this is a very simplified version of the story in a couple minutes, and it sounds crazy, but the question then is, are there any implications for us today? Are there any implications? I believe so. It was Catholic father and social critic Ronald Rolheiser who said this: we are distracting ourselves. In our entertainment-based, social media-based world, we are distracting ourselves into spiritual oblivion. Sounds harsh, doesn't it? But the question that we're going to face today is, are we? Are we distracting ourselves into an oblivion? Jesus, I pray that these next few minutes just convict us right to the heart, Lord, and that you lead us towards being the type of men and women who are different like you desire, as we talk about what we're going to talk about today. See, in my household, we have a saying. We say, boring people are the only people who get bored. Okay, we say that like all the time. Like my girls, they'll be doing something or whatever, and they just get tired of doing it, and they'll come up and be like, Dad, we're bored. And I'm like, you know what? We say in our family, boring people are the people who get bored. There's so much to do. Find something to do. Be productive. Like find something, like literally. And you live in San Diego, go outside. Boring people are the ones who are bored. And seriously, can anyone remember that point in time, what it was like to actually be bored? Like, I always look at Ruthie and it's like, man, when I was your age, when I was a little bit older than you, I was actually bored because the iPhone or, the smartphone hadn't been invented yet. And whenever you were places and you had a moment and you had a few minutes to wait, you just have to like sit there with your thoughts and you just have to think. And you would actually kind of get bored at times. And I reaching back to the old me and say, only boring people get bored, Tony. But the reality is that now the iPhone since 2008 has been working its way in our lives, or, whatever kind of smartphone you have has been working its way into our lives to the point that any time we have a spare second, we, me included, pick that thing up and check stuff. It's become an appendage that almost fills every moment of silence and solitude that fills our day. I mean, think about it. You got a minute now and it's like, well, you want to check the news? You want to check the stocks? Do you want to check Facebook? Do you want to check YouTube and watch a video? Do you want to check TikTok? Do you want to check your bank balance? Do you want to catch up on your budgeting? Do you want to, my personal favorite, do you want to sit on Instagram and watch kook slams for hours on end? You can check them out. Or play a game, play Candy Crush or do whatever. But anytime we have a moment, we can just pick out our phone, the appendage that's in our pocket, and we can distract ourselves from actually being bored or having to sit in silence and think. There was a survey from Microsoft that said that 77% of young adults answered by reaching for their phone when nothing else occupied their attention. I am guilty of this as well. We're going there today. We're talking about silence and solitude in week 2 of Different. The game plan that Jesus has for you and the game plan that Jesus has for me is that we be people who are different. See, C.S. Lewis wrote this masterful book. It's one of my favorites. It's called The Screwtape Letters. And The Screwtape Letters is this really trippy book. I don't recommend reading it at night, but ultimately the story is about an uncle demon who is training an apprentice. He's training an apprentice demon. His name is Screwtape, the uncle demon, and he's teaching them lessons about how to basically pull people away from God and how to lead people into spiritual oblivion that we're talking about. And one of the things that he says is that the devil's realm, he's training his young nephew at the time, and he's saying, hey, our master, the devil, our master's realm is a kingdom of noise. It's a kingdom of distraction. It's a kingdom of noise. And then he says this, and it's going to come up on the screen. We will make the whole, like our intent, our aim is to make the entire universe a noise in the end. And it sort of feels that way, doesn't it, right? Feels like everything, modern marketing, the way that we consume news, the way that we consume social media, it seems that everything is vying for our attention, whether that be good or bad. And so today we're going to talk about this idea of silence and solitude, but I want to give you the big idea first, and it's in your note sheet if you're following along, whether that be the online notes or that be the PDF notes. Silence and solitude position you to hear from Jesus. Last week we talked about the trellis and the vine. We talked about how the trellis for the vines that hold the grapes, they prop and they position the crop up so that it can get maximum exposure to the sun, and in doing so it bears 10 times the crops. And what we're going today, the big idea, I'm just giving it to you out the gates, is silence and solitude are that trellis. They position you to hear from Jesus and to live differently like him. And I want to define silence and solitude before we get going. I defined it this way for you. Silence and solitude equals setting aside time to be alone and to be quiet with Jesus. And before we do a deep dive, I feel like I don't even got to convince you that it's so easy to get distracted, right? It's just like you and I know that I live a distracted life. I know that most of you who are tuning in today live a distractive life. After all, we've got work, we've got kids. I got 4 kids. Sorry to continue to remind you. We've got bills, we've got budgets, we've got relationships, we've got, as we've already talked about, our appendage that we pull out of our pocket all the time. We've got our phones. I don't have to convince you, I don't think, that we live distracted lives. But the problem is, if we're not careful, we'll distract ourselves into spiritual oblivion, meaning just spiritual nothingness, absolute disconnection from the living God. And if I'm 100% honest about this series, the whole series, welcome to our spring at Church 180, but if I'm 100% honest, I need this series. And I chose to preach this series. I chose to preach on this. I chose to speak to you about this because I, first and foremost, need to hear what I've been studying and the words that are coming out of my mouth right now. I need this. And see, like a lot of this series was birthed out of the book that I talked about last week, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. And in it, he asks one question that's going to be one of your reflection questions, and I'm going to give it a piggyback. And this is going to be one of your reflection questions that are on the sermon notes that you can look at. This is that, could it be that we're using external noise to drown out some of the internal noise that's in our lives? And I want you to think about that this week as we digest through this. I wanted to say this question, and this is in your reflection questions as well. Could it be that one of the major gaps between where you are currently and where Jesus wants to take your life can only be found in silence and in solitude? See, fortunately for us, we've got a Jesus who not only told us what to do and told us what we need, but showed us the way to live differently, as we keep talking about in this series, differently. See, Luke, he records Jesus withdrawing from distractions and going out and experiencing silence and solitude 9 distinct times. It's in your sermon note sheets, all the passages. I want you to go and look at them on your own. But he records 9 times for Jesus to get away. Actually, the last time in chapter 22, when Jesus gets away right before his execution, it says, as usual, Jesus got away to pray and to be with the Father. As usual, look them up this week. They're all in your note sheets and stuff. But I want to kind of camp out for just a second on Luke chapter 4. And this is the very first one that's recorded. It's Luke chapter 4. It's going to be in your scriptures. And this is right after Jesus has been baptized and the Spirit of God descends on him like a dove. And he, the voice from heaven says, "This is my son whom I'm well pleased." And all this stuff it's the transfiguration. It's the moment where Jesus is confirmed for his ministry by the Father to go and do everything that he's about to do and lead the life and die the death that he's about to live. And it says this in Luke chapter 4, verse 1, Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, left the Jordan, left the river, and he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing during those days, and at the end of them, he was hungry. It says Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, he left where he was, led by the Spirit, and he went into the wilderness. Literally, what this word means is he went to the deserted place, the place of solitude, the place where he was completely alone. And I want you to notice that the Spirit led him there, that God the Father himself led him there. And I also want you to notice too, because I think oftentimes we think, like, why did Jesus have to go into the wilderness for 40 days and be tempted by Satan while he's hungry and while he's at his weakest point? But I would flip that around and say, what if it took Jesus getting away? And what if it took Jesus being in solitude, praying with the Father, to actually be able to withstand the temptation from Satan in the time? What if instead of, he was hungry, but what if instead of being weak because he was hungry, what if instead he found the wilderness as a place of strength with which he could live according to his calling and according to his purpose? What if? And see, I'm going to ask the same thing for you today. What if silence and solitude, getting away from the hustle and bustle, putting away your phone, what if silence and solitude would create that point, would position you to be, maximum sun, the trellis, but it would position you to a place of maximum strength for your life so that you can live out your calling and live out your purpose before God in a different sort of way. What if? See, this would be a constant rhythm for Jesus. We just talked about 9 times Luke records this in his gospel. I went through all of them this month in my Bible reading journal as we went through Luke. But 9 times. And I would say this is in your note sheet. One of Jesus' constant rhythms was to escape busyness by getting away in silence and solitude to be with the Father. That's like this axis in the point of Jesus. The busier he got, the more people expected out of him, the more people wanted him, the more that he withdrew and got away for silence and solitude to be with the Father. And I'm just going to ask this a few times because I know that, my temptation is to be like, well, I ain't got time for that. I got 4 kids. I got, a marriage. I got a full-time job. We've got, a pandemic going on, which has caused everything to be crazy. I don't have time for that. And I guess my question then is, if Jesus needed it so much, why do we so oftentimes think that we don't need it? See, but I want to look at one more in the book of Mark. We go to Mark chapter 6. There's another time. I love this. Mark chapter 6, verse 30, and it says this. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. Jesus had just sent them out to do ministry, like full bore. Like they were going and doing just some incredible things in the name of Jesus. And it says they gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done and taught. And then because so many people were coming and going that they didn't even have a chance to eat. Like they were so busy that they didn't have a chance to eat. Have you been there? I have. And he said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet, to a deserted place, to the wilderness, and get some rest. Translation, guys, translation for us. What you really need isn't a day at the spa, a cocktail, glass of wine, a hot tub, or, calling myself out here, a hot tub or a massage chair or a new mattress. That's where I've been lately. Or even a vigorous workout. What you need is time to get alone and to just be with me, is what Jesus is saying. And he needed it. He knew his disciples needed it. He was teaching his way of life. And my question is, if Jesus needed it so much, why do we so oftentimes think that we don't need it? See, Henry Nouwen wrote this. He was a theologian, just a really incredible writer, but he wrote it this way in The Way of the Heart. Without solitude, it is virtually impossible to live a spiritual life. We do not take the spiritual life seriously if we do not set aside time to be with God and to just listen to him. He's very harsh. He's saying without silence and solitude, you can't do it. Without silence and solitude, you really don't have a relationship with Jesus. Without silence and solitude, you are living in spiritual oblivion. You just are. That's what he's saying. And it sounds harsh, and I want to kind of fight back and be like, well, but the reality is that many people who claim to follow Jesus are living in utter disconnection from God and spiritual oblivion as a result of it. You cannot, he says, you cannot have a spiritual life. You cannot take the spiritual life seriously without setting aside time. This is how it looks at my house. I'm just going to be honest with you. Every single morning at about 5:30 a.m., I don't know, anywhere between 5 and 6, our 3-year-old comes in the room. And she is always rearing to go. We had one morning this week where she slept until 6:30, and it was like, what is happening? But in between 5 and 6, and she gets quite chatty and talkative in the morning right away. And so the rest start to wake up eventually, and Jenny and Ruthie start to come in, and everybody gets into our bed, and cuddles are given, and conversations are had. But at some point, we say a phrase. Kind of like the boring people are the only people who get bored. We have another phrase in our mantra in our house, and it's usually at about that 6 o'clock time where we're just like, okay, girls, it's for your good right now. We'll say it this way. It's for your good right now that mommy and daddy get time with each other and time with Jesus. So we're going to ask you to go downstairs and play with your toys quietly for a little bit, but we need time with Jesus. And I guess what I'm saying is we live in a culture, kind of like the Roman culture we were talking about earlier, where there are so many distractions. And I'm not saying the answer is to head east and go off into the desert to live your life in complete solitary confinement. But what I am saying is you need time in your life where you can just be silent and you can be alone before the living God. And so may you adopt a phrase, or may you have a time, or may you say something in your day that's like, hey, because it's truly for our kids' good. It is for their good that we get time with each other. We say that sometimes at night, but it's for their good that we get time together and that we get time with Jesus. We're going to be better for it, better parents, better everything. See, without that time for Kelsey and I, for Kelsey and I to actually have conversations and hear from each other, I mean, what kind of marriage would we have, or what kind of relationship would we have? It wouldn't be much of a relationship. Because, and this is how it says, put it in your note sheets, any relationship requires time. I mean, my kids, they require time. My wife, they require time. A lot of you tuning in, I as your pastor, I want to give you time. I want a relationship with many of you. And the reality is it works the same way with Jesus. Without time, with silence and solitude, time before the living God, we don't have a relationship. We don't. We are kidding ourselves if we think that just showing up at church or doing some good things or giving some money or whatever is, can replace time for a relationship with Jesus. It just takes time. So here's how I see it, okay? Going away from this message, because I really do believe that Jesus wants you to live differently. The way of Jesus is different. It's not better, it's different. And the way that I said it, first off, silence and solitude position you to hear from Jesus and to live differently like him. But the way I see it is we have a couple options. We can make time in our lives for a relationship with Jesus. We can walk away today. I know it's Sunday morning. I don't know when you're tuning in, but you can walk away from this time in this message, and you can make time in your life for a relationship with Jesus. You can. That's going to be the challenge. The challenge is that you have one of our Bible reading journals that we talked about, one of the life journals. If you don't have one of those, I want to encourage you to go onto our website, church180sc.com/give, and select, when you have an option to select which one to give to the Bible reading journal and give $8, and we will get one of those to you. But yeah, the challenge is that you would spend time each day in the scriptures with Jesus, that you'd set aside, you'd carve out the time, and you would get to know him through his word. And then I want to up the ante throughout this series. I want to say, I'm not saying every day. I'm not saying from now until forever. But what I am saying is, what if this week you made time for 1 hour where you were just alone and you were quiet before Jesus? That whenever you're tempted to get distracted and pull off your phone or let your mind wander to whatever, that you would recalibrate and recenter your focus back to Jesus, and you would say this simple thing: God, what do you want to say to me? God, what do you want to say to me? I'm listening. I hear you. What do you want to say to me? That's the challenge this week. Get a Bible reading journal and spend time in that. If you have your own YouVersion, whatever, that's fine too. But I love the Bible reading journal. Get one of those, and then spend 1 hour. Figure it out before an hour goes by. Figure out when that's going to be. Put it on your calendar and make it happen. Spend 1 hour with Jesus this week. That's option one, is that we make time in our lives for a relationship with Jesus. And then option two is this: that we just give into the noise, do what we always do, and distraction in our lives. We give into the noise and distraction in our lives. And I want to warn you that this option comes with the consequences. I put it in the email this week, because when we just give into the noise and we give into the distractions in life, we are setting ourselves up for worry, for anxiety. We're setting ourselves up to be completely disconnected from God. We're setting ourselves up to live our lives on the surface rather than to live our lives to the fullest. as Jesus talks about, and we set ourselves up to turn toward escapisms in life rather than life itself. And my hope is to lead myself, my family, and you towards the latter. May we be people who choose Jesus in a deep, hope-filled, life-giving relationship with Him. And see, it's kind of like this. It goes back to last week. We talked about John chapter 15, where Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Anyone who does not remain in me will not bear fruit. If a branch, you don't have to do this, but if a branch gets disconnected from the vine, it will wither and die. And I guess what I'm saying is, when it comes to silence and solitude, when it comes to what we're talking about this week, if you do not set aside time to have a relationship with Jesus, you will not bear fruit, and your spiritual life will wither up and die. You will be a part of that spiritual oblivion, which is what we do not want. May you find life, and may you find life to the fullest in Jesus. I'm going to end with this quote. Today. It says this. It's by a guy named Andrew Sullivan, who says, modernity slowly weakens spirituality by design and accident in favor of commerce. It downplayed silence and mere being in favor of noise and constant action. The reason we live in a culture increasingly without faith is not because science has somehow disproved the unprovable, but because the white noise of secularism has removed the very stillness in which it might endure or be reborn. If the churches came to understand that the greatest threat to faith today is not hedonism, but distraction, perhaps they might begin to appeal anew to a frazzled digital generation. Dang, that's good. May we see what our enemy is. May we see that our enemy is noise and distraction. And may we trust in Jesus and do something about it. We're going into communion right now. Communion, I'm just going to invite you to get some drink and get some food. And the drink just symbolizes the blood of Jesus. The food symbolizes the body of Jesus. And it shows that Jesus ultimately had the power to break us free from the distractions, to break us free from the noise, and to draw us close to Him. So we do this each week just to remember the sacrifice of Jesus so that we could be forgiven, so that we could turn toward hope. Jesus, thank you for the hope that we have in you. And may we be people who trust in you, rely in you, have a relationship with you. And in doing so, battle the noise and distractions in our lives so that we can hear from you and be positioned to live our calling and purpose in life. And it's in your name we pray, Jesus. Amen.
Jesus, my living water, name above all names, Lamb of God, new life giver, you conquered the grave, and I don't have to wonder where my hope is coming from. I lift my hands for who you are and everything you've done. Oh, I know what I'm living for. I know what I'm reaching for. I'm reaching for you. I'm reaching for you. Oh, I know what I'm living for. I know what I'm living for. I'm living for you. I'm living for you. Healer of broken people, never there is freedom wherever you are, and I can see it. You're the light in the dark. You are, you are, you are. Oh, there is power when I say your name, and I can feel it, 'cause you're breaking the chains. You are, you are.